Welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about strategic cost management. Remember, everything relates to cost and how can it optimize the revenue and the profitability is the crux of today's discussion. Now, basically, what we would love to discuss today? We would love to say how strategic cost management helps us to create an edge over our competitors. What are the life cycle cost and how do we manage around it? uh, Specific stress would be given, in fact, in this presentation on GIT. GIT is nothing but just in time because that relates to the cost traceability because costs are being consumed as and when the production is happening. Let us move to the basic concepts about strategic cost management. There are three general strategies, essentially three, and nothing beyond these three. We may talk about any industry, we may talk about any market, we may talk about any genre of product or services. These are the three general strategies that comes around it. One is of cost leadership, second is of product differentiation, and third is all of focusing. Now, this is what we'll be discussing in the subsequent slides. We will love to understand what is cost leadership. Cost leadership is where it gives you the unique advantage over your competitors because you're producing your products and services at the least minimum cost, which the competitor are finding it very difficult to mimic or copy. So essentially, to provide the same or better value to customers at a lower cost, and that is what we are looking into it. So how do we strive for the lower cost strategy? Now this is one point that we need to understand. A company can have its production facility and produce the whole gamut of product and services within their facilities, or it might sublet, subpart, or differentiate certain production on the basis of the viability and probably where they have a competitive edge. If the vendor is able to provide certain part of their products at a basic cost and without compromising on the quality, why not offer a vendor supply chain basis? Now this is what we need to understand. How can we drive the cost down? So a company might redesign the product, which might probably require fewer parts or cheaper products in the first place, cheaper raw materials in the first place. Essentially, we are trying to figure out of lowering of the production cost and the cost of the product that needs to be maintained even after purchases. Now, this is essentially what is known as cost leadership strategies. Let us discuss differentiation strategies. Now, what is differentiation strategies? It's essentially giving more value for money. And the company which strives that the customer has been thrilled every time he or she is utilizing their product or services. So it's basically we need to give that wow factor to the customer. And that is what differentiates us from the competitors. And that is what puts the company in a bigger, higher, and probably undefeatable lead in the market. So a retailer of computer might offer on-site repair. Now, what is on-site? People might say ki, oh, you might have to go to their vendors, their shop, their particular address and get things repaired. On the other hand, a company might offer ki, you don't have to come to our premises at all in the first place. You need to just inform us and there would be our person, the service engineers will be visiting your home, your offices to get things repaired. Now, that is what is a value for money for this. The customer is enthralled altogether. Probably such a features might not be essentially extended by other companies. Now, this is only one of the examples that I've given it to you. There are companies who might give credits on a 30 days limit, on a 15 days limit, on a 45 days limit. There are companies who might give discounts on a cash payment and so on and so forth. There are other ways to have differentiate your product, your strategies, and probably hog on to the limelights of your end customers as such. Let us come to the third strategy. Third strategy is all about focusing strategies. Now, this is where we need to understand the firm selects a particular market, a particular customer segment in which it tends to become a leader. Now, in the third world country, The differentiation or focusing strategy can be on mass strategy, where you are basically targeting the general population, as popularly known as Gen Pop, right? Now this is a mass market, and what we looking at it, we are looking at the least possible cost. So if you can have certain features which have been produced on a retail sector. On the other hand, the first world country would be a niche strategy which comes around it, again a focusing strategy, but we are looking at a high end customer, those people who have deep pockets, those people who are willing to shell out dollars from their money, from their pocket. Now this is what focusing strategy. Focus can be at the higher end, focusing can be at the lower end of the segment, focusing can be at different products, focusing can be on the quality, focusing can be on the experiences. uh, uh, as on one on we are requiring it. So let us focus on a target customer, and this target customer is something which we like, we would love to win their hearts. So that is what focusing strategy is all about it. Now, let us. We have already spoken about the retail strategies wherein the end customers and the companies are directly interacting with one another. But what happens when a company is producing a product for a consumption of another company on a mass scale, probably, and that is what the industrial value chain is all about it. Now, herein is what the value creating activities of basic raw materials and to the finished product. There might be a number of stages, phases that the product goes around it. So how do we go around it? Fundamental to the value chain is the recognition, is the fact that we need to understand there is a linkages, there is a relationship, there is uh, a dominoes effect that happens between two companies, between activities, be it within the firm, be it external to the firm. They are interlinked, and if I'm not exaggerated, they must be interlocked all locked all together. As so that is what the industrial value chain is all about it. So value chain frameworks, let me go around it. The internal linkages are relationships among the activities. So if a vendor is producing a part, producing your product, part of your product, now that is what internal linkage is that performs within the firm's portion of the value chain. Now this is where the vendor produces a part of your product, and after the completion and delivering the product, can only you amalgamate it or assemble the product within your main product line and come up with the finished product. So this is where internal linkages has to be concerned around it. Whereas in the next linkages, where the firm value chains are performed as a supplier or as a customer, wherein it might be related to packaging material, it might be related to retailerships, it might be building up customer relationships. Now, these are external linkages that we would love to have. It. There are ethos, there are values, there are cultural differences that a company would like to imbibe in its vendors. For example, a vehicle automobile manufacturer would love to target a customers, but probably they are not able to sell it. Why? Because their wholesaler or the reseller, or should I say the retailers, would have to target the end customer. The last mile delivery is up depending upon them. So that is what the supplier linkages is all about it, and the customer linkages, if I may say so. This is a value chain framework for industrial linkages around it. Giving for a petroleum industry, if you look out here, if we are going around, if you see, this is firm A, right? And then we have firm B and firm C. Now what are firm B and firm C are doing about? They, firm B is just doing into oil exploration and oil production, just producing it with sheer physical labors and hardship. Then we have the firm C. They are not on the on-site of production of the firms or extracting the oil from the bottom of the earth, probably. But what they are looking into it, they are into oil refining or refining the oil, filtering the oil so that it can be made usable by the human consumption, be it in the vehicular transmissions, or be it for the production of electricity, or generally for the consumption in general. So we have firm B who's essentially into production, firm C who's essentially adding value to the product, and then the firm A comes around it who can actually look about every byproduct, let us say gas, let us say retailers and customers who are actually going around it. So you see the basic concept for a petroleum industry where firm B, firm C are dependent, or should I say firm A is dependent on firm B and C per se. Basic concepts of organizational activities, structural activities, activities that determine and underlining the economic structures of the organization. Executional activities, activities essentially defines the process, probably the capabilities that is directly, and I say directly, linked to the ability of organization to make it profitable, to make it viable. That is what executional activities. If you have the core product, but if it is not been reaching the end customer, it the viability of the organization becomes a big question mark. So yes, organizational activities as far as structural activities are concerned and executional activities are very vital. Let me elaborate upon the structural activities per se. We are talking about building plans, we are talking about management, structuring, grouping employees, quality of employees, having complexity. Now, these are essentially structural activities that comes around it. Now, with every activity, there are costs involved. If you look into it, what are the costs? Number of plants, number of location that you are putting up your plants, what is the scale that you're putting up in the plants, what are the production values, the volumes that we're looking into it, the management style, the number of work units. Now, these are the activities, these are the drivers that actually make an organization a potent force in the market. Now, this was structural activities. So, what are executional activities? It is all about the quality of employees. It is all about the quality of um, facilities, the production, the equipment, the machineries. These are the executional activities which will tell you how your end product is going to go around it. The capacity development. So executional cost drivers are degree of involvement. If you are going for a complete automation, are you going for a mechanical execution? Are you going for completely human oriented transformation as in manual labor that goes around it? Depending upon these three technologies that you want to involve, there are costs involved into it. So the degree of involvement, the quality of management approaches, plant layout efficiently, production configurations, the capacity utilization is all coming into the basic concepts. So let us understand level by level. Let's say the unit level, as the case might be, and then probably the batch level, and the essentially the retail end of the product level per se. Now, what we are looking into it in the unit levels, it's the grinding of part, assembling the parts, drilling, using materials, using power, consumption on a bigger head, on a larger scale. Where in batch level, probably you're talking about a day, a week, a batch, an issue, a phase that we are talking about, setting up the equipment for a drilling process. Let's say if we continue with an example of the petroleum products, extraction, a certain site, what are the infrastructure that we need to level it down, and that is essentially been done. On the product level is redesigning the product depending on the quality of petrol, the quality of oil, the quality of gas that has been extracted. How do we redesign, how do we refine and come up with different products? Let's say kerosene, polyethylene, uh, gas, diesel, you name it and we can come up with it. So expediting, scheduling, testing the product, these are unit level, basic level or batch level, and the product level activities are all about it, which has a transparent drivers as to what are the machine number of machine hours, labor hours, machine. We need to talk about everything as far as the unit level drivers are concerned. Then comes the batch drivers, where are we talking about the number of setups, the number of moves, the inspection, the durability, the longevity of the equipment. Product level drivers are the number of changes orders that comes around it, the number of late orders that is being built around it. Now, as far as organization goes around it, if you want to see it, this is how it goes. Everything goes right on a clockwise fashion. Organizational activities is setting and using the technologies. Structural cost drivers are just-in-time process of the traditional method that comes around it. Operational activities is moving of the materials from one location to another location, one finished product to another finished product, or one work in progress to another work in progress. And the operational drivers, as the case might be. So let us understand the second aspect, the life cycle cost management. A basic view of a product life cycle is, at the end of the day, it's a marketing viewpoint. It can be a production viewpoint. Marketing viewpoint is what can be consumed by the market or what can be pushed into the market. And the production viewpoint would be what can we produce on our own? What technologies do we have? What are the qualities that we have? And the Next would be a consumable life point. What is the customer wanting? Not what we can push into the market, but what does the customer desire to? Now, this is what exactly tells you the PLC curve, the product life cycle curve, as we say so. Right at the introduction stage, people might not be interested. You see, number of units of sale. In the initial stage, the number of units are not much higher. It needs to be pushed. People needs to be groomed. Consumer needs to be educated. And then once things get picked up, it goes shoots up to the growth stage. Now, this is what the growth stage is all about. It where the number of sale increases, and then people get hooked to the product is where the maturity stage level comes around it. So you don't need much of a marketing activities that was required in the introduction stage. Remember, at maturity levels, people are demanding, requesting for your product, requesting for your services. But then people do get fatigued over a period of time. If you do not innovate, it might actually go to its own demises, and that should be the decline part of it. So what the company should need to ideally do it from introduction. Yes, we need to put in pump in money in the for the marketing effort. Growth, where we need to see that the customers have been thrilled for. Maturity is where the customers are looking for it. We don't require to pump in money probably, but then we need to innovate so that there is another product cycle that comes around it. So there is something which goes on, and the company becomes much more viable. So product life cycle, production viewpoint is where we need to do around it. What are my qualities of manpower, qualities of raw materials, qualities of availability of the products that goes around it? With them, we can do what we can do a research, and probably this is what we need to be understanding what we can produce. And accordingly, we start with planning. We have a prototype in the research, we have a market testing phase, and then probably we start with planning and start production. With this comes the next stage of designing. This is the stage where designing, where product can be made efficient, cost can be hammered down, things can be skewed here and there to match the requirement of the customer. Then is the testing, the production, and the logistic, wherein the productions is the availability of our standpoint, of our understanding, of our availability, viability of the company. Based upon it, the production life cycle of the production viewpoint state. Now let us go into the cost reduction, because essentially this particular presentation is all about strategic cost management, right? So we will talk about the functional based system and the ABC system. ABC is classified as an inventory system, wherein we are looking A as the best quality, B the second best, and C the least amount of quality. Now what is, when I say quality, it needs to be the A consume the maximum number of amount of money or your dollars, B the second best, and C the least. Also, there are many things. If you can control A and B, probably the least C categories of inventories would have a lot of inventory, a number of quantities, but they will not be consuming much of your cost. So you need to put a tab on your A and B classification. So yes, this is what we comes around it, the functional based system, where we are talking about $40 per direct labor hours and $8 per hours of material usage rate. Now this is the functional based system. In ABC system, we need to understand what is my labor usage. Now this is the major part that comes around it as A category. So employments and machining is something which takes the maximum thing. So what we need to go to $10 per direct labor hours. Material usage is again 8, which is inconsequential, which remains with the functional things. Then comes the machining part is $28. Purchasing activities is $60 per machine orders. Setup activities approximately $1,000 per setup hours. Warranties and customer repair cost. Everything has been accounted in an AB system as per se. Now, what do we go around it? Now, if you look, the unit number of produced is almost same in design A and design B, 10,000 units only. There are direct machine hours or material usages which might be 100,000 for design A and 60,000 for design B. Labor cost is 50,000 and 80,000 for design A and B respectively. Now what are we looking into it? We are trying to reduce the cost in design B as such. We need to hammer the cost, and that is what I wanted to hammer it out. If we can put it out and the quality part comes out from this part, from here, if we can put it out and if we look what can be done around, how do we go about it? So cost saving analysis, if we go around it, you will see design B will obviously have a unit cost which is much higher than of design A. Now why? This is where we need to understand. This is what has been done for $8 material usages for 100,000 units and at the rate of 60,000 consumption that comes around it. So this is what we need to go around it for design A and design B. So traditional costing system, the direct material hours, the conversion cost, the total manufacturing cost, and the unit produces, which needs to be divided equally. So in design A, we have been linking it out with the conversion cost, wherein design B, the conversion cost is much higher. That figures out to be on a differential levels. Now this is what needs to be ascertained. We need to decide on what methodology that we go around it. Now let us come to the ABC system. Now what are we looking out here? If you look into it, the unit cost remains for design A as 230 and for design B at 197, and post purchase cost is somewhere around $80,000 and $15,000. Look what happens. Look the differences that comes around as far as the ABC system concerned. Now this is where the cost has been involved as on when on basis. Let us go to the next slide to understand or make you understand how we calculate everything as on when on basis. Now the cost reduction method, the crux of this presentation, is all about reverse engineering, is all about value chain analysis or value analysis or process improvement or quality improvement. Now yes, what we can do is we have to have a target price. Now this is what needs to be done. This is the target price. Now what is the market share objectivity and product functionality? This is coming from the market as to what we are looking for, what is the marketing anticipating from us. So based on the target price, we need to figure out the target profit. And once we have done the target profit, we need to add up to the target cost. If I can only manage this cost and this price, we will automatically squeeze in a profit. Now, this is where the R&D teams comes into it. The cost has to be met, the product has to be produced, and this is what we are trying to do around it with just in time. Yes, what is just in time or JIT? The JIT is essentially a pull through system. It is as on when on basis the production is being implemented or initiated. Insignificant inventory, smaller supplier base, long-term supplier contract. There's a longevity, there's a durability about the suppliers, cellular structures, multi-skill labors, which might be absent in your traditional system. Traditional is all about push through, as in what I need to initiate in the market and probably push. This is what we are looking into it, and you need to consume such products only, because this is what we are producing. So as a company, it might be very viable, but as an end customers, people might detest it. So it's a push through system. It has a significant inventories. Why? Because we are producing a much more inventory and then trying to push it in the market. Larger supplier base, definitely yes. Since I am producing it, the suppliers are already been there. Short-term supplier contracts. Why? Because the production is more or less fixed, and the suppliers might be switching, or we might be switching the suppliers, whoever produces or whoever provides the raw material at the cheapest base cost. So it's a short-term supplier, which might not be the case in the just in time. Just in time would be a long-term supplier. Why? Because the supplier would be supplying very little quantity of raw materials at a time when compared to the traditional system. In traditional system, the orders will be always in bulk, but in just in time, the orders will be for on a weekly basis, at best on monthly basis, the quantity to be consumed. So that is where which becomes much more differences. It might be cellular, it might be departmental structure. So just in time is essentially a very decentralized orientations, where in traditional it is all about centralizations, all being the cost being controlled at the center part of it. Now, essentially what happens, it looks very nice on the overview that the traditional system, the cost have been in control, things have been there, which might not be fixed in just in time. But if you want to see it in the real time, real world perspective, you will find in traditional system we build up a lot of huge inventories, and inventories are nothing but finished products are nothing but cash in hold. So you are basically converting raw materials and cashes with an uncertainty that these inventory might never get sold off also, which might not be the case in just in time. Just in time, as on when the demand has been requisitioned from the market, it has been initiated in the production process. So it is always the the moment the production has been finished, it has been consumed or it has been supplied, it has been delivered to the end customer. So there are no inventories per se, and this is where just in time wins hands down over the traditional system. Allow me to discuss it with in front of an accounting framework. You look at a traditional journal entry. In traditional journal entry, $160,000 is material inventory, and accounts payable is also $160,000. Yes, definitely yes. This is the amount of material that we go around it. But in backflush entry, it is all about in work in progress, in process inventory, WIP, work in process is always 160,000. So account payable is 160,000. Now people might ask you what is the differences. So let us go around it. In traditional inventory, it's work in progress inventory, as in $160,000. Material inventory is also 160,000. But in backflush entry, there are no entries. Absolutely, there are no entries. So what have I done? I have actually eliminated one step even in my accounts department. I have removed one perspective. Why? Because this traditional work in progress inventory is the only inventory that has been there in backflush journal entry. Let us go into the traditional entry. Let's say work in progress is $25,000 and the wages payable also is on $25,000. Absolutely in the credit and debit system. But backflush entry, everything is amalgamated into the into your overhead cost, nothing but your overhead cost. See, overhead controls is $225,000, and in accounts payable is also 225,000. Remember, labor cost was $25,000 only. But in backflush entry, conversion cost, I don't call about overhead. I say from the raw materials to the finished product, the conversion cost is $250,000, wherein wages payable is 25,000 as actual was the traditional inventory, and the accounts payable is 225,000. Mind you, this is where you need to understand. It might look a little bit 25,000 skewed towards the traditional entry, but $25,000 are also a part payment. You pay as you go. You don't pump in the money one at a time. So traditional entry is work in progress is about 210,000 and overhead cost is also 210,000. But in backflash entry, there are no work in or overhead control. We have already amalgamated it into $250,000 as been shown. So traditional journal entry, the finished good products is $395,000 and the WIP inventory is also $395,000. But in backflush entry, this is completely different. Why? Because finished good, now this time it's the finished good inventory is 395,000, wherein I can very well segregate raw material and in process inventory is still 160,000. Mind you, this amount of money is not been actually being spent, but they are on the way undergoing the process, and the conversion cost is $235,000. But this is what we are talking around it. So cost of goods is $395,000. Finished inventory is also $395, $95,000. In backflush entry, the same entry goes around it. So we have eliminated a number of steps out there in the backflush entry, in the just-in-time method. But out in traditional methods, absolutely you go have to go and the work gets cumbersome. And I'm just giving you an example. Believe me or not, many companies will have n numbers of products. So traditional journal entry is 15,000. Overhead control is also 15,000. Essentially, this is what comes. The variance is recognized out here. Absolutely. The cost of goods sold is 15,000 and so on and so forth. With this, I come to an end. So basically, we have decided upon the strategic cost management where we have said about the focusing, the differentiation, and the leadership strategy that goes around it. Now, this is we need to understand how just-in-time production and the traditional production system, how the accounting system varies. Do we store inventories and probably occupy the dollars around it, or should we free the dollars and free the inventory, not only the inventory but also the space associated and the cost associated with it? How does it benefit the companies in the long run and the customer at the best part of it? This, with this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video.